Daryl's not here, eh?
Who's that?
Daryl's not here.
I guess not. I guess that's finished.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And I am sorry to say that summer has officially ended and kids are back at school, but I hope you all had a good long weekend. I want to acknowledge that we are in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples in the Harry Williams and Huron-Robinson Treaties area. We recognize the long history of First Nations and Métis peoples on this land, and we show respect to them today. We acknowledge our neighbors, the Watamohawks, and the First Nations of Moose Deer, Shawniga, Wasasking, Magnetawan, Henley Inlet, Nipissing, and the Dokis. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask for approval of the agenda. You should have received an addendum in advance of 2 p.m., which contains the exhibit that goes with item number 7, the staff report, item 7C. The addendum now includes the contract that was included, and there is a closed session verbal update from the CAO and Councillor Fellner on the West Perry Sound Recreation and Culture Center. I don't anticipate it to be long. May I have the approval of the agenda?
Mayor?
Councillor Cole, sorry.
Yes, I have one addition to the closed agenda as well, if I could, about Belvedere.
A verbal update on Belvedere, is that okay?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. And I guess at this point, you have noticed that we have received notice from Councillor Moffat that he is no longer a landowner or then therefore a voter in the Township of Seguin. So he is no longer a member of council. I will ask Craig to explain a little bit the law, but I do want to pay tribute to Councillor Moffat and all the contribution he's made over the last 3.5 years. As a councillor, he was an important member of council, and I wish him well in his future endeavors. We will be sending something formal to him, but I'll ask Craig to just elaborate a little on the status.
Good afternoon. So Councillor Moffat has notified us as of Friday afternoon that he is no longer meeting the criteria to be eligible for a member of council. So he gave us the official notice on Friday. So today, council, we will ask council after you adopt the minutes, we can have that further discussion, and then there'll be a motion that goes on the table to declare the seat vacant. Once you declare that seat vacant, there really is no change as far as council because we're within 90 days of an election. So we just carry forward as we are until the election. As far as your quorum, it's the same. It's going to be 4 still because it's 4 of 6. And the same goes with your votes. 4 votes carries a vote. Other than that, that's about it, unless you have questions.
Are there any questions for our clerk? No. Okay, so I ask for the approval of the agenda as it stands. All in favor? Thank you. And is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? No? So I have asked for the adoption of the minutes. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on August 22nd, 2022 as circulated. Could I have a motion from Councillor Coles?
I will make that motion. I'll so move.
And seconded by Councillor Osborne.
I second that, Mayor.
All in favor? Thank you. So I have a motion here that whereas pursuant to section 259 of the Municipal Act of 2001, SO 2001, the office of a member of council of a municipality becomes vacant if the member becomes disqualified from holding office of a member of council under section 258 of the Act. And whereas Councillor Darrell Moffat has provided notice to the clerk that Councillor Moffat is no longer eligible to hold office of a member of council pursuant to section 258 of the Municipal Act. Now, therefore, be it resolved that in accordance with section 262 of the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001, Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby declare the office of Councillor, Ward 1, as vacant. Could I have a motion from Councillor Fellner
Yeah, I so move that, Mayor.
and seconded by Councillor Collins?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Thank you very much. And once again, I pay tribute to Councillor Moffat and his contribution to the township. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn the regular meeting to hold a public meeting for the following matters. Zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2022-0016-H for Curtis, and zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2022-015-H for Schwartz, and zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2022-0014-F for Spray. Could I have a motion from Councillor Finson?
I so move.
And seconded by Councillor Coles.
I will second that motion.
All in favor of moving into the public meeting? Thank you. Council will now hold a public meeting for proposed zoning bylaw amendment applications. In accordance with the Planning Act, council will consider all matters placed before it prior to passing a zoning bylaw. Anyone wishing to receive notice of the passing of a zoning bylaw amendment who has not submitted such a request in writing should provide their full name and address to the clerk. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. The purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2022-0016-H for Curtis is to satisfy a condition of provisional consent application number B 2022-0008-H. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which that notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property and by regular mail on August 17th, 2022. Notice was therefore considered to provide in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to this application?
No correspondence has been received.
Has anyone registered to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application?
No one has registered to speak to this application.
I think it's pretty straightforward. We have Brady Davis on the call with us. Brady, do you want to explain it a little bit? And then we'll open it up to questions.
Yes, the purpose of this application is just to satisfy a condition of provisional consent, which just required the applicant to obtain approval for a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the retained and the severed lands to bring both the lots into compliance with the zoning bylaw. I can answer any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, I will move on to the next application. The purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2022-0015-H for Schwartz is to rezone the north portion of 128 Grays Road to prohibit the construction of buildings and structures by rezoning the subject property to a site-specific zone. Additionally, lots 122, 124, and 128 will be rezoned to recognize the new lot areas and lot frontages. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property and by regular mail on August 17th, 2022. Notice was therefore considered to be provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to this application?
No correspondence has been received.
And has anyone registered to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application?
No one has registered to speak to this application.
Do we have Jamie or Patrick on? No. Are there any questions from council?
I can speak to the application, your worship. Is
Oh, Taylor? Okay,
My camera
great.
won't work for some reason. Sorry about that.
Do you want to explain it a little bit?
Sure. This rezoning is fulfilling a condition of consent that came to council in the spring. Essentially, it was several lot additions, and through the public process, there was a request that the lands fronting onto a small water body to the rear be zoned out. And that is what this application and zoning bylaw will do. So it recognizes different lot areas, frontages, and zones out the rear water body.
Does council have any questions? No?
Mm,
Seeing none, we'll move on to the next application. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2022-0014-F for spray is to remove the H symbol and reduce development rights of the existing LSR-49 zone. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which the notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property and by regular mail on August 12th, 2022. Notice was therefore considered to provide in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to this application?
No correspondence has been received.
Has anyone registered to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application?
Olga Lalka has requested to speak and I believe is present.
And before we recognize Ms. Lalka, Taylor, do you want to explain what this is about?
Thank you, your worship. This is an application where the proponent wishes to essentially downzone the property. Today, they have development rights for a cottage and a septic dwelling pending the submission of some reports. What they would actually like to do is turn this into a picnic space. So keep the 2 sheds on the property, allow for future gazebo in the cleared area where the cottage is currently permitted. The outhouse, which is currently on the property, they're inquiring with the Conservation Authority to ensure that it is as legal, but there will be less development rights if this is approved than there is today.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Lalka, are you on the call?
I am.
Would you like to speak to it?
Hi, yes. The application is absolutely fine. I'm a neighbor across the lake. And my concern, the concern that I voiced was related to the outhouse. So I was just a little concerned about any possible leaching into the lake, but I have received assurances from the applicant that they are going to proceed with any kind of appropriate adjustments. And I also was advised that by one of your clerks that the outhouse actually is outside of this bylaw application anyway.
Thank you. And I trust that the property owners will follow all the recommendations of environment from that regard. So I appreciate you appearing and your interest.
Thank you.
Does council have any questions? I see none. So thank you. Council will now close the public meeting and reconvene our regular meeting. So this is the result. Oh, this is just closing. That the public meeting I have motion that the public meeting held for the following matters is hereby closed and that the regular meeting is hereby reconvened. Could I have a motion from Councillor Osborne
So move.
and seconded by Councillor Fellner?
I'll second that, Mayor.
All in favor of moving into the regular meeting? Thank you. So this is the paperwork associated with what we just went through. I have a motion that bylaw number 2022-096, being a bylaw to amend the Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-010-010-01210, application number R 2022-0016-H for Curtis at 49 Cemetery Road is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Collins
So move your motion, Mayor.
and seconded by Councillor Finson?
I second that motion.
All in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that bylaw number 2022-097, being a bylaw to amend the Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll numbers 4903-010-003-11010 and for property roll 4903-010-003-10920 and property roll number 4903-010-003-11025, application number R 2022-0015H for Schwartz at 122, 124, and 128 Grays Road is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Coles
I will so move.
and seconded by Councillor Osborne?
Second that.
All in favor? Thank you. And the last one. I have a motion that bylaw number 2022-098, being a bylaw to amend the Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-030-005 -2280. All in favor? Hang on, we're getting interference here.
I think you're okay now.
There, okay. Application number R 2022-0014-F for spray is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Fellner?
So move, Mayor.
And seconded by Councillor Collins? Councillor Collins, can you second this?
Yes, I was muted.
Okay, all in
Second.
favor? Thank you. Okay. Okay, so we're moving on to item 6, which is the strategic planning and budget discussions. And we have with us Craig Reith and Dan Hillenbrand of the Finance Committee, as well as our treasurer, Michelle Fraser. So I think I will turn it first over to Michelle.
Thank you very much. This is the beginning of our 2023 budget cycle. the annual meeting where we meet with the finance committee. We go over some of the basic assumptions, and we get some direction from council in terms of tax rate increases and any projects that council would like to see on the books for 2023. So included in the package was a list of preliminary budget assumptions and inputs. These are the very beginning of the budget. A lot of these numbers are estimates at best, but I felt that they were important enough and big enough that I needed to bring them to council's attention early in this process as opposed to later. We're looking at CPI of 7.6% right now, which has some effects on the budget going forward in terms of cost of living. We have increased staff, so just keeping the staff that we have for 2023 is going to cost us $280,000 just off the top. So I know that's a number council's heard before. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it to them. I did go over these budget assumptions and inputs with the finance committee last week. They had a very robust and spirited discussion on some of these numbers, and I know they have some thoughts that they'd like to pass on to council as well.
Okay, thank you. Craig, I don't see Dan, but I do see you. So are you our spokesperson from the finance committee?
I am, Madam Mayor.
There's Dan. Okay, go ahead.
Jim Beatty, as you know, is chair of the committee, but he sends his regrets. He's traveling and not available to join this meeting today.
Thank you.
And thank you, Michelle, as well, for your time last week, spending time with us to go over this budget assumption. We appreciate your involvement there. I'll just provide you with our comments from the committee. In general, our comments regarding the 2023 budget reflect the current economic environment where taxpayers are struggling with high inflation and increasing costs in everything from their grocery bills to putting gas in their trucks to the high propane and natural gas bills they're all going to incur this winter. We therefore ask Council to carefully consider the various aspects of the budget, including potentially reducing and or deferring expenditures in order to keep the projected tax rate reasonable. Council has an obligation to think about pressures on all taxpayers and not just those who work for the township as the budget is prepared. In particular, we have the following comments and suggestions. There is much in the media regarding economists' view that the current inflation is relatively short-term due to short-term issues such as the pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. As such, those economists' view is that the current inflationary environment is transitory and short-term. There's also the real risk of a wage price spiral, wherein wages are increased to offset price increases, which in turn cause producers to raise their prices, and we get into a vicious wage price circle. And wage increases are permanent, setting the bar higher for next year's wage and tax rate increase. However, if price increases are in fact transitory and short term, then there's less need for a permanent wage increase in this budget of the magnitude to offset the current CPI numbers. I don't know how the township can tell staff that their 2023 wage increase will be less than the current CPI numbers, even if it's considered short-term or transitory. But maybe the township can incentivize staff in some other one-time manner to make up for short-term inflation. In addition, we recommend deferring non-critical capital projects due to the transitory nature of this current inflation and spend on those projects when capital costs could be lower in 2024 or so. We definitely agree that funding the huge infrastructure funding gap has to begin soon. Ideally, it would have begun in the last year or so when our tax rate increases were in the 2% range and funding could have been more easily absorbed by ratepayers. But we do not feel that now is the time to burden the taxpayers with this 1.5% increase in 2023 when they're already facing so many other financial challenges. In summary, we recommend that instead of considering a total tax increase of between 8 and 10%, that council and staff consider the budget in 3 separate components, or 3 buckets, if you will, that can be individually approved. First bucket is looking at what I call it just the operating budget, which, and Michelle can clarify the exact amount, but for instance, it may only be a 5% increase for the existing operating expenses, especially if wage increases are modified to take into account short-term or transitory inflation. The second bucket to be approved would be those expenses that could be considered discretionary, and I hate to use the term, but kick down the road to a future year. And then the third component to be approved would be the 1.5% component required to fund the asset management plan or the infrastructure deficit gap. Finally, we urge council and staff to be very transparent and clearly communicate the reasons for the 2023 rate increase to all ratepayers, and include something in their 2023 property tax bill, especially if the tax rate increases in the 8 to 10% range. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hillenbrand, do you have anything to add?
No, Craig's done a great job, and we've sent along our comments, so he's done a fantastic job of summarizing, and I think he's covered it well, so thank you.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions for the representatives from the Finance Committee? No? Well, I thank you very much. I'm assuming we have your report in writing as well.
We did not provide anything in writing. We can certainly provide something to Michelle, I suppose. I'm not sure what the process is here.
It would probably be useful if you could send your notes to the clerk so they could be included in the minutes if. Yeah, but that's the investment. Yeah, that's to do with the investment policy. Yeah. So if it's easy to send in your notes, that would be useful. I see a question from Councillor Fellner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was just going to ask the members of the Finance Committee if they're going to stick around for the rest of the discussion in this issue, in case we want some further. I don't have any questions right now. Doesn't mean I won't have a question. Greg knows me well enough. I might have a question in a minute or two. So I'm just wondering if they're willing to hang around.
I am certainly willing to hang around. Yes, thanks.
Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to express my interest in getting a copy of Craig's submission for the record so that it's fresh off the top. It was a good submission. I'd like a copy if I could, Craig. Thanks.
Craig, I think if you send it to Clerk Jeffrey, it'll be in the minutes and then we'll all have it.
Will do. Thank you.
So we also have from the Finance Committee on page 101 of your agenda package, a proposal to research a Seguin Township investment policy. Are either Craig or Dan prepared to speak to this?
Just for your information, Walter McCormick, also of our committee, his background is in financial management and pension fund management. He's the one who actually put together this proposal. He was hoping to attend today's meeting, but I know he had another call starting at 4:30. We as the committee have not discussed it in great detail, so unfortunately at this point I can't add anything further. I'll ask Dan if he wants to.
Yeah, no, I would agree, Craig. I think we've got Walter would be best to, both address it and package it on our behalf. He definitely was the one bringing it forward, and they seem like some great ideas. So we don't want to miss something in the process. Something though we could send along as well, I would think.
And I'm going to ask our Chief Administrative Officer to speak to it a little bit. I actually have had the opportunity to speak to Mr. McCormick about it as well. So you can weigh in.
Thank you, Worship and members of council. It's in brief, my conversation with the Finance Committee and the purpose of this this proposal in front of council is to just read council's perspective on whether or not there is a desire for the Finance Committee, supported by township staff, to invest some time and resource into exploring a investment policy or not. It's a significant amount of effort that the Finance Committee will put forward, and before they do that, they would appreciate a bit of a nod from council that there's an interest in us pursuing what this may or may not look like. There's a great deal of resource available at the table with the Finance Committee that can bring forward some recommendations, some policy level discussions in due course. But first and foremost, we wanted to make sure before we invest that time and effort that council has a chance to weigh in and say whether or not this is something that interests council.
Thank you very much. And I think one of the items that we looked at a few weeks ago was the shortfall in our asset management plan. So we are consciously looking for alternate sources of revenue other than the tax wallet. Councillor Fellner, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just two things. I guess I was just a bit confused on the last matter. Is that what are we supposed to do with the last one? Are we supposed to
We're to take their recommendations under advisement as we get into the budget planning.
Yeah, but I mean, is the budgeting process going to proceed under the assumptions laid out in Michelle's report, or is I'm just a little bit confused here? So maybe somebody could tell me what we're looking at here. Are we being told this is what we're going to do for our budget assumptions, or are we saying we want to look at these budget assumptions and perhaps
Michelle, can you weigh in?
Create a new-
I mean, we've had these types of recommendations every year that we've been on council. So that's, I think, what Michelle is doing for us. And as she indicated at the beginning, some of them are a little bit speculative at this point. But Michelle, tell them how you expect the budget planning process to unfold.
So these are just some of the basic assumptions that we have right now, just the basic inputs. The Finance Committee has presented a few options that, if council wants to look into those, we can, whether it's delaying certain capital projects, whether it's cutting out the 1.5% increase for the infrastructure gap. A lot of those things we have in the assumptions, but if council would like to investigate using that to try to decrease the tax rate increase, that's the kind of direction that we would like to get from council.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Yeah, to me, going back to the previous matter, and I guess to me, it's there's enough of a difference this year in these budget assumptions that I think we need to, look out of the box a little bit and take some of these comments from the Finance Committee in mind. Maybe there's a year that seems to be perhaps a year by itself, especially with inflation. There's some other tools, I think, in our box. I mean, I don't know where we're going to end up with this year's budget. We tend to have a surplus every year. We tend to have an increase in revenue every year based on new assessment for building improvements in new buildings. I'd hate to see us go down the road using these assumptions without a very robust discussion between council and staff about exactly how we want staff to proceed. That's my opinion. The second matter, the matter that's in front of us, I'm 100% in agreement that this should be done. Long overdue.
Thank you very much. I think the point of today's meeting is to put forward those assumptions as our staff begin to build the budget. The Finance Committee has also given us some food for thought with the 3 buckets and possibly reducing the taxpayer burden. And I think as we get into budget discussions, things will evolve and we need to keep both in mind. But the assumptions begin the place where our staff can begin planning.
No,
I
I understand that. I'm just wondering if we want to just, whether the irregularities in this year warrant, discussing all these assumptions further before we direct staff to go down this road. That was my only point.
Okay, and I see Councillor Coles, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, starting with the research, a proposal to research Seguin's investment policy, I would totally support that. I don't think we should consider investing all of our reserves, but certainly in what some of the recommended investments. But I think certainly a part of our reserves could go into longer term investments to yield better results and help offset any such tax increases as we have this year, or we're looking at this year. So that's, I support that wholeheartedly. On the other issue of the going forward budget assumptions, I think we have to look at these really carefully. It would be hard pressed to go to our ratepayers with an 8% increase. And I know this is preliminary, but I can only imagine the reaction. So I think it's really, and the cyclical nature of some of these things based on what we've been seeing just look at the building trades and the building materials, and they were really high and they're coming down and they may continue to come down. And many of these things, I know for a fact that propane, as an example, is in fact coming down. I'm in the process of securing my propane contract for the next year, and it's already come down. So from their original proposal, so some of these things are happening, and I think we'd be remiss to rush into any really hard and fast decisions at this point in time on some of these budget issues. So yeah, that's my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Michelle, could you just clarify on page 100, where you show in total, the last sentence under taxes, or a municipal tax rate of 7.91%. Are you suggesting that that's the potential increase?
Increase,
that's
yeah, sorry, there's a word missing there. It should be municipal tax rate increase of 7.9%.
Okay, so that is the potential. And I think council is very, very wary of that high rate increase, but I just wanted to make sure we were understanding that sentence properly. Councillor Osborne, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councillor Fellner and Coles concerning the previous issue about the preliminary budget. And back on the investment topic that we've been on, Michelle, is it correct to say that we are heavily invested in GICs, low yield GICs?
We were at one time. The bank actually recommended that we leave the money in our bank account because we were getting more interest in the bank accounts than from GICs. So
okay, well, it's just my opinion. I think in the state where the Bank of Canada is raising the prime every quarter or bi-monthly, that we should be looking at higher yields, maybe a touch more risk to buffer our revenue. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess we've got 2 issues on the table here. I personally think it's worth doing the research into the investment. I think that's time well spent, and we are going to need other sources of revenue to meet our asset management shortfall, and this may be just one in the toolbox. So could I have a show of hands from our councillors on those that are in favor of the Finance Committee investing the time and doing the research into alternatives? Nobody's recommending investing yet, just doing the research. Okay, thank you. very much. On the issue of the tax rate assumptions, I think I would like to turn it back to staff to consider the recommendations made by the Finance Committee as opportunities. I think an 8% tax increase is likely unpalatable at this point in time. And we do have to recognize that it's one wallet in the taxpayer pocket. So I just ask staff to consider those recommendations as we move into budget planning, and the CAO would like to weigh in here.
Thank you, Worship, and members of council. And again, a great deal of thanks to the Finance Committee for their continued participation and due diligence with looking through all of this information. And, we are, as Michelle stated, we are in the very, very early stages here. There's a lot of very high-end assumptions. We do not have facts in front of us on a lot of it. So a lot of this is assumption-based, but I think what we're hearing is 8% is perhaps a little too high. Knowing that, we will go back and continue to sharpen our pencils as we refine and detail the 2023 operating and capital budgets, with the understanding that we are in a very unique time in the world, and things are trending up and down all over the place. So we will keep a really close eye on what's happening, with inflation and where we're faced with when we inch closer to bringing this budget forward. But we understand your position that 8% is a big number. It's not a number that makes any of us feel warm and fuzzy, I can assure you that. But we are prepared to do the hard work that it's going to take to bring in a reasonable and responsible budget for council consideration in early 2023.
Thank you very much. And again, to Dan and Craig, as spokespeople, please take our thanks back to your committee. We appreciate the thoughtful input and wish you the best on the research project you've just been approved to do. But I think it's well worth doing. We need to be very, very conscious of what we're doing with our reserves and our money. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having us as well. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Please convey our thanks to the rest of the committee and your chair.
We will.
Okay, I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the staff reports as presented on the agenda for September 6, 2022 meeting of council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Finson?
I so move.
And seconded by Councillor Coles.
Second that.
All in favor of moving into the staff reports? Thank you. So I have a motion that Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby grant provisional approval to consent application number B 2022-015-F for park, subject to the conditions set out in the decision. And you have all of those recommendations in your budget package. Could I have a motion from Councillor Osborne?
So moved.
And seconded by Councillor Fellner.
Second that, Mayor.
All in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that pursuant to section 45 bracket 1.4 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby permit the Committee of Adjustment to consider minor variance applications within 2 years of an owner-initiated zoning bylaw amendment. Could I have a motion from Councillor Collins?
So move.
And seconded by Councillor Finson.
I second that.
And I'm going to ask Taylor to explain a little bit about this.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So in 2016, the provincial government passed a bill which prohibited, amongst other matters, official plan amendments within 2 years of getting a new official plan, zoning bylaw amendments within 2 years of a new official plan amendment, and then minor variances within 2 years of a property being rezoned. The idea was to avoid changes to documents which the ink was still drying on, and to try to slow down changes and to allow development to be a bit more orderly. The reality is, especially with minor variances, is that we see a lot of changes on properties. We see changes to the architecture or design, and with such a high turnover rate in property sales, it ends up just functioning as additional red tape and bureaucracy in most municipalities. So this provides flexibility for property owners to apply for amendments should there be a rezoning application within 2 years.
Does council have any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, this is item 7C, and the attachment to it appears in your addendum, although I have all of it here. I have a motion that bylaw number 2022-102, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a client-supplier agreement for end-user computing devices and services between CDW Canada Corp. And the Corporation of the Township of Seguin, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Can I have a motion from Art Coles?
I will so move.
And seconded by Councillor Osborne.
Second that.
And this is the recommendation that we did see at the last meeting. Does anybody have any questions for Forrest? I see none. All in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the Office of the Integrity Commissioner's annual report dated July 2021 to from July 2021 to July 2022, attached as Schedule A to this resolution. Could I have a motion from Councillor Fellner?
I'll move that motion, Mayor.
And seconded by Councillor Collins.
I second it.
Are there any questions or comments on the report, which is included in your agenda package? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So all in favor of receiving her report? Thank you. And the next item is there for your information. Councillor Finson, I assume your AMO report will be in the next council
yes.
package?
I will have it. Yes, I will. I'll have it ready for the next one.
Great. We have council report. Oops, sorry, Councillor Osborne.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I assume that was your AMO report. I didn't see a sign off on it. Was that yours, Mayor? The report from AMO, do you hear me okay? I'm not muted. Do you hear me?
Yes, it is mine. Thank you, and we'll
Oh.
clarify that.
Okay, and one other thing, did we not skip, correct me if I'm wrong, 7A, not 7A, just a moment, please. Yeah, 7A, the recommendation. Did we resolve that issue or? I'm not clear.
7A, what we passed the consent application for Mr. Park.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so yes, that is my conference notes.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna go to Councillor Finson first. We'll start at Ward 6.
I haven't had a really busy couple of weeks. A lot of constituent calls about noise and fireworks and parking and stuff like that, but all is being looked after with members of staff or myself. Some traffic issues I've been speaking with Tom about, and so we've got that all under control. I'm sorry about not having my AMO report ready. I actually left it at home. So anyway, I will have that ready for the next meeting. And there was a couple of things that I wanted to bring to council from those meetings that I thought were very interesting to do with photo radar for the school zones and community zones in the township. Anyway, that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Councillor Collins.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, other than the usual phone calls coming in at this time of the year, I've also have a couple of issues that I'm dealing with at present. Nothing's been finalized yet. One is the Camp George, and the other one is Lake Isabella boat ramp. So when things start to come together, things start to gel, I'll bring that back to council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fellner.
Thank you, Mayor. I as well have responded to more than the usual number of calls from the constituents, just some general inquiries, some noise complaints, dead animal. Other than that, I'm happy to report as of the weekend that Seguin Township now has commissioned its second fireboat. We had a launching on Saturday at Gordon Bay. It was very well attended. Probably 100+ residents showed up. My special thanks to our fire chief, Sean Carroll, and the firefighters that were in attendance for a great demonstration of the capabilities of both the water borne and the land borne equipment. Everybody was very impressed, and it was a very, very good event for the community. I think it was. I was really very pleased to see as many people as to take an interest and show up, and certainly the interest that our fire department showed in interacting with the public was very gratifying. So again, my thanks to Sean and the team.
Councillor Fellner, I'd just like to say a little bit of congratulations to you, because this might not have all come to be if you hadn't been the point on the spear that kept it moving. The generosity of the people of Lake Joe is extraordinary. They raised way more than they needed. So the fireboat will be extra specially equipped and have even a reserve for replacement. But Councillor Fellner, you kept this ball rolling. So thank you.
Well, I had some pretty good help with the committee. The ladies and Jay were pretty committed, and boy, I'd like to have them on a couple more committees. I'll tell you that. So, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended Three Lakes AGM along with yourself and my opponent on Saturday. It was well attended, good discussion. I have a Clear Lake virtual meeting, 7 o'clock on Thursday. That ought to be interesting, doing it virtually. And I have been very busy on the campaign trail. And when my fellow councilors say they've had some questions, I've had literally hundreds of comments and questions. So I've got a lot of meat in my bag with me. Other than that, nothing else to report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it's been quiet. The last 2 weeks have not had any Lake Association meetings. They all occurred prior to that, but we did have one a Belvedere meeting, which I will report on in the closed session. And I did have a constituent call or email about resurfacing of Osler Park Drive, which I see is in our capital budget for 2023. And the rationale he put forward, which I support, is that that is a major industrial artery into Perry Sound and transportation route for all of us, as well as all the factories and industry, not factories, but industry on Osler Park Drive. So it's really important. It's a real important route. So I'm glad it's in our capital budget. Let's just hope it stays there. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh,
Mayor-
Councillor Osborne.
Sorry, Mayor, I omitted one item. I just today received my paper mailer survey on STAs. And I guess the question is, I have to respond to people as to how long will they have to the return envelope to return that survey, and at what date will we now conclude, based on the fact that we're rather late coming out? Thank you.
Councillor Osborne, great question. Thanks for bringing it up. We have not determined a date to close on the surveys at this point in time, knowing that there was quite a delay, and who knew there was a global shortage of envelopes. But that is the cause. But at the end of the day, we have the surveys are out, they're in the community. We'll be monitoring, and as they start to slow down and perhaps we don't see any coming in for a few weeks, that's when we'll put out a sort of last call notice. But for sure, right through September, this will remain open.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. So as you're door knocking, please encourage people to complete the survey and get them back. That September 8th date, the September 8th date is not. So
Good. Thank you.
I'm intrigued that you guys say it's quiet. Last Saturday, I was at the Tri-Lakes AGM, the Foley Fall Fair, and the Fireboat Launch. It was a busy weekend for me. So, but I do want to say that all three of those were really well attended. The Foley Fall Fair, I've never seen it as busy or with as many horses. So it's getting rebirth. The Fireboat Launch was extraordinary. Watermelon and ice cream cones were very popular, as hot as it was that afternoon. The children were asking Sean to spray the fireboat hose at them, and he refused because it would knock them over. But it was a really good event, well attended, and something we should be very proud of. It was also interesting that the fireboat from Footsbay, from the Muskoka Lakes Fire Department, came up to pay tribute to our new boat. So they were there with their boat to congratulate Seguin. August 27th, I was at the Rosso Fall Fair, walking in the parade with Councillor Finson and MP Scott Aitchison, and a whole lot of bicycles that were decorated like dinosaurs. And on September 1st, we had a pool fundraising meeting, and we are hoping to present at the upcoming Municipal Services Board with a fundraising strategy and the case for support. But that's in the hands of the steering committee right now. But for those of you that said it's quiet, it's been really busy. So that's my report. And now we have a motion that Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the board and committee minutes and agendas and the correspondence as presented on the agenda for the September 6th meeting of council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Finson?
I so move.
And seconded by Councillor Coles.
I'll second that.
All in favor of receiving the minutes and agendas? Thank you. And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby proceed to a closed meeting at 5:27 p.m. in order to address matters pertaining to a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board related to the West Perry Sound Recreation and Culture Center project, and an update on the Belvedere Heights for the Home for the Aged. So could I have a motion from Councillor Osborne to move into closed?
So moved.
and seconded by Counselor Fellner.
I'll second that, Mayor.
All in favor? Thank you. And we'll just give Craig a minute to, okay.